Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, I'm going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication again of James Charles. This is not his first time on the channel. Hopefully, it's going to be one of his last times on the channel as he addresses some of, well, everything that's been going on with him over the past, I would say months, but it's been some years now. So more on that in a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. Alright, for those of you who do not know, James Charles is a beauty guru and makeup artist on the platform. He saw a very quick rise to stardom, and then rumors, as is usual, started popping up about him. So he has been going through a lot over the years and addressing these rumors. Some patterns have shown up, some tendencies in him have shown up. We've seen him on the channel a few times, talked about his body language and the message that he's talking about. And then here recently, he just released another video as well, talking about having an open conversation, more or less with us, which we understand what he's trying to do on that front. I'm going to go ahead and look at not only his nonverbal communication, but also the psychological processing behind that and some of the verbal patternings that he's showing. And at the very, very end, give you my opinion as well as what the science shows us. I think that's enough of an introduction for this. Let's go ahead and dive into the actual video itself.
I really want this today to just be a super honest, raw, unfiltered, sit down.
I want to point out a few things. First, for those of you who don't notice, he is in front of his normal infinite white background. This is not uncommon for him. So this would be considered part of his set baseline, I suppose would be a way to put that. That's not technically a thing. I just made that up right now. But he regularly has this set. Now, he's also wearing a fairly white shirt. So there's the possibility that he's trying to subliminally maybe manipulate us or something along those lines. I don't get that feeling from the rest of this video. I have gone through his initial video, which if you would like to watch the full thing, go and head over to his channel. It's 30 minutes long or so. I've edited it down to just over 10 minutes. So we'll be working with an edited down version. He has some other things that he talks about in there, but we're focusing on some of the key points. And along with that, I just wanted to be able to point out that he is speaking in a normal volume. It is rather soft, but at least he upped the gain on his volume so we can hear him well. So that's a welcome change. Good on you, James, on that front. Let's go ahead and dive into the nonverbal side of things.
Conversation between myself and anybody else who wants to listen. There's a lot that I want to talk about in today's video. I have a lot of...
So while James speaks, he doesn't have a very dry mouth while he's speaking, so that will come out. This is person to person. Some people have a very dry mouth, some people don't, and that's just something that's in his baseline. There's nothing to be able to read into that. He's also gesturing more prevalently. This might be due to the fact that he's in his normal recording space, so that when you go back into a space that you've been working in before, you will fall back into other nonverbal tendencies. So this would be considered his makeup studio baseline. People do have separate baselines for areas that they're in, and then down at the very, very core of themselves, they have their genuine personal baseline that is more difficult to be able to nail down. So this will be considered his studio baseline. So from this, we'll be trying to establish any spikes, be them positive or negative nonverbal spikes. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, a spike is literally a lack or a sudden burst of activity. So say he's active here, well then maybe he does a whole bunch of different gestures and that's a positive spike. Say he's active here and then maybe a whole bunch of gestures freeze, well that would be considered a negative spike. So that's what I'm referring to in this point when I'm talking about spikes, but that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and continue.
Positive topics, but I also think it would be ridiculous and irresponsible to try to just come back to social media and pretend like nothing happened and move on with regularly scheduled makeup programming. So I do also have some pretty serious topics to discuss in today's video as well.
So the trigger warning that he offers here on his screen, I will also offer the same ones. I'm not going to be specifically talking about any of the content that he's saying, so much so as I'm going to be analyzing his verbal patterns and nonverbal patterns as per the usual. But nevertheless, I offer the same trigger warning. Along with that, we will see that he does not have a script available to him on any area, it seems, around the camera. I did a fair amount of time just looking at his eyes, trying to see if he had any moments of reading. If he has any bullet points, they're very short. He does often regularly refer to the bottom left of his screen, so like he would be looking off and down to the side here. I do believe that's where he has his spotting screen for his camera, so he can reference where he's looking. I have seen that pop up a few times. It is not in regards to any sort of accessing of memories, especially since that has been largely disproven, the directional eye cues of looking in various directions to be able to tell whether it's a forced, fake, or real recollection, whether they're lying or deceitful. That has been largely disproven. Enough of that talk now, though. Let's continue.
Being what happened a couple of months ago, I want to clarify some things that didn't happen a couple of months ago and everything that happened after I posted my video, but more importantly, talk a lot about the realizations that I've come to behind the scenes, the conversations that I've been having with myself, my friends, my family, peers, business colleagues, and professionals.
So during this time, you could see what his blink rate is at, and it stays pretty consistent throughout. Blink rates can be an indicator of psychological processing. So the fact that his is staying pretty consistent throughout that means a couple things to me. One, it means that while this is unscripted, he did prepare himself for this. I don't think that he maybe planned his words specifically, but he did definitely get prepared to shoot this video, as it is a big video. But that means that he's not maybe sidetracked as much with his verbiage to lend towards an increase in blinking or a decrease in it. So that's just something that I made note of throughout the entirety of this video, that his blink rate does stay pretty consistent with where it's at now. Let's continue.
Really come to terms with a lot of different issues that I have been ignoring for quite a while now. And once again, just talk a lot about the growth and hopefully be able to not move on from the situation, because I don't think that that's the appropriate language to use, but hopefully move forward. And I really hope that you guys will choose to join me in this conversation.
So right now, his verbal patterning, he's saying the correct words, which even in the past, from his past apologies, so on and so forth, he has always said the correct words. It's usually been the more subtle nonverbal seepage that he's given, or the logical processing outside of what he's saying that has given him away. During this time, he's still saying the correct words of being like, I don't want to treat this as if it never happened. I doubt that I'll ever be able to fully just move on from it. I want to be able to move forward with this understanding, so on and so forth. Those are the correct words, and I have to give him kudos for that. At 22 years old, that is a good indication of at least a stronger intellect. He has the ability to process that. Now, whether he's using these words now to manipulate or it's being authentic, we can't really say this early on in the video, but let's continue as we watch and see what pops up to help us be able to understand which of those two it's going to be.
When I posted my last video, one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I got was that it felt really, really ingenuine and scripted. And that really, really sucks, because that video was not scripted, but I am really bad at just sitting down in front of a camera and talking. So by the time that I, got the sentence out that I was imagining in my head after 8 different tries.
So he's using a phrase, oftentimes, and this is not uncommon. Everybody has their own specific tell that helps them build time in between what they're saying. Some people will say, some people will say and us, things like that. I will have some of my own as well, as I'm trying to figure out what my next beginning of my sentence will be. I'll say another line to be able to help fill that out. I'm trying to think of one that I do regularly, maybe, and so on and so forth. Might be one that I do. It's just helping a person buy time. That indicates that it's likely unscripted or largely unscripted. Those repeated patterns of saying, or ums and us and so on and so forth. There it is. Then that really is an indicator that it's not a scripted video. It's something that he's really just sitting down and saying now. So that's good to be able to see. That does push me to believe that he's not trying to manipulate through a really well-written or a script that's designed to kind of invoke the feeling of being unscripted. I hope that makes sense. Let's continue.
It almost did become a script. And I think that we can all agree that that last video was definitely not a great one. It was a miss. And that really sucks, because that video was super important.
He had a pretty big hesitation where it's not a great one. He was trying to find the correct words for it, and I think he landed on some good, gentle words for it. It did come across scripted and faked and forced, which we called out previously, and the fact that he's calling attention to that is good. And I'm going to talk about some verbal patterns that can actually lend towards a person's credibility and why it does so as we continue on through this video, because a good number of them show up in James's video. So let's see how those play out.
Obviously really embarrassing to talk about that in front of the entire world, but I really wanted to apologize to the people affected and also hold myself accountable for the role that I did play. And I feel like a lot of the points and a lot of what I was trying to talk about in that video got overshadowed by the tone and the delivery. And I really don't want that to be the case with today's video. I do recognize that a chit chat get ready with me might not feel like the most appropriate format for a serious conversation. I hear you 1,000,000%. So my goal is to hopefully be able
the palms towards you kind of thing. This is a defensive gesture, but it's not saying like I'm defensive because I'm lying or anything like that. It's quite literally like, hey, hold on, this is why I'm doing this. Many people will do this. Most people do this pushing away style of gesture when they're trying to explain something that could be seen as wrong. So as soon as you can pick it out, even of your own baseline, your own nonverbal communication, you will notice it again and again and again. It's very, very common. Just something that we're making note of. I have a general idea as to how James behaves nonverbally just due to the past work that I've done on his videos, but that is still something that we want to be able to make note of.
To create a beautiful look by the end of this video while also having a really serious conversation with you guys that I think is important, so my brain won't be too distracted and running 1,000,000 miles an hour and tripping me up over my words.
So this is interesting that he brings this up. He's going to be doing a makeup look while having an intense conversation. And his reason for that is because it helps him stay focused, it helps him stay clear, and that can be fair. For instance, for me, I'm able to speak much more clearly while I'm in studio or in office, and that is because I do it again and again and again. So I'm able to communicate better while I'm here talking to you in this setting. So for him to be able to do that, that does make sense psychologically. Now, speaking on deceit and how it plays out in a person's mind, it's harder for a person to lie while doing other things as well because their brain is already split between two different things. So James has unintentionally, and while he's calling it out as maybe being a bad thing, he has unintentionally done something that will make it more difficult for him to lie if he does lie, by adding more activity to it. This can be done in a myriad of different ways. Anytime that you're able to distract a person's brain by doing something else and asking them questions or having them tell a story, you're more likely to have the authentic story if it flows, and it's more likely to show its errors if they're doing something else because the brain is so split on two different activities. So this is actually pushing us towards James's credibility during this, and it will heighten our ability to get a more accurate read on him. So if he does lie, it will be easier to see because he's already going to be distracted by what he's already doing. Just wanted to point that out as a psychological aspect of what's going on here because it is important to make note of. So let's continue.
I hope that makes sense. I don't want to undermine the severity of the topics in any way, shape, or form. I think this will be the best way to go about just talking about a lot of different things together. And that being said, I think we should just go ahead and get started. As you guys know, I posted my Holding Myself Accountable video, and in that video talked about how basically two guys had come forward with stories on social media about how I had inappropriate contact with them when they were under the age of 18. Now, when this was all going on, my first reaction was to be super upset because I did mention in that video that they had lied to me about their age and that I absolutely did not groom them. And my first reaction was to post a no more lies style of video debunking everything.
So during this time, he's moving really fast past this instance, this allegation that he's now addressing because he's addressed it again and again and again. So I think that's why he's moving so quickly by it. Even though it's a very weighty allegation, he has kind of dismissively moved by it. So even though he's dismissively moving by it in this video, considering the context of the other videos, the other times that he's spoken about it, and the other times that he's covered it in whatever other videos, that makes more sense for him to be doing now. If he still tried to hang more and more weight on it, that would almost be a red flag in and of itself because of the fact that he's already covered it before and before and before. So that's good news for his part. It's adding a little bit more credibility towards him and possibly adding some more authenticity towards his message. Good news so far. Let's continue.
And fighting back and everything. And then I really had to sit down and reflect and look back at myself and my actions and things that had happened. And I really realized that at the end of the day, as the adult and the person with the platform, it was 1000% my responsibility to be doing my due diligence and checking.
So something that I am noting, even though he is doing this makeup look, which can push him to be more authentic, aka it's harder for you to lie, like I just mentioned, it is also making it a little bit more muddy for me because it gives him something to do, which non-verbally speaking can make it to where it can mask some of those desynchronization tells. A person will fidget, a person will move, a person will do various things when they have nothing to be able to distract themselves with. That can be telling non-verbally. So what's working for us verbally with that, and psychologically, where it's harder for him to lie because he's doing other things as well, it's making it easier to disguise it non-verbally with his body language and his physical tells. So we're kind of playing this game of which one is better and which one's worse. It is what it is. We'll try to navigate it as best as we can as we continue forward.
Into the people that I was speaking to, and I failed to do that. One of the responses that I saw quite a lot on social media and in the comments of that video was a lot of people I felt like this is just another James Charles scandal that I could easily move on from like nothing ever happened. And I really feel as though
so he has a little bit of contempt coming into the side of his face there when you're saying James Charles scandal. You could see that sneaking in on the side of his face there, and that would indicate that he feels intellectually or morally aloof or above or superior that accusation. And since it is kind of slipping out without him seeming to consciously do it, that would be a solid indicator as to how he feels about it, which is okay. And this doesn't actually push him towards deceit or anything along those lines. It shows us that he at least believes that he's above that. So he believes that whatever those accusations were untrue. So as far as I can see, this would be pushing me towards authenticity rather than deceit. Another good tick on the James Charles belt, but let's see how everything else plays out as well.
it's important for me to just address right away that that is absolutely not the case in any way, shape, or form, and that could not be further from the truth. First of all,
something that I want to be able to point out that James does regularly is when he's trying to emphasize something, he does use the word absolutely a fair bit. This pops up repeatedly, and it's not necessarily around an area where he's being deceitful, so we can't be like, okay, so this might be his personal tell of deceit, is this use of the word absolutely. But he also has a pretty substantial blink every time that he does that, where he's really trying to amplify what he's saying. Absolutely, so on and so forth. This is not an uncommon tell for people who are genuinely just trying to really amplify what they're saying or hammer home the point that they're saying, to close their eyes like that. It could be seen as an eye-blocking gesture, but considering the context in which it's given, it's not likely an eye-blocking gesture because it makes sense with the cluster that he's giving. So in this area, this is still pushing me towards authenticity. In the past, I have not been a huge fan of James Charles personally, but I have to give him credit on this point. So far, he is doing exactly what he needed to, both non-verbally and verbally, but we'll talk about that a little bit more at the very end of the video.
I feel like calling this a scandal in the first place is just not an appropriate word to be using with this situation. Using that word with this situation just feels really, really wrong, and it really feels like it's making light of what actually happened.
So right before that cut where he's really, and then it cuts and he says wrong, he has an expression of disgust. He has a tightening of the lips. It's a tight smile mixed maybe with the lip compression and a little bit of disgust coming in into the corners of his nose there, and that does synchronize quite nicely with what he's saying. The word wrong would actually quite nicely fit what his nonverbals just displayed there. It's another point of synchronization between what his words are saying and his nonverbal communication is saying, which indicates that he at least believes or feels what he is saying authentically. Let's see how that plays out.
And I don't want to do that. I definitely have not been taking this lightly. If I thought that this was just some stupid scandal that I can move on from, I would not have uploaded my last video and I would be posting on social media like nothing ever happened. But this has been the worst but most important wake-up call of my entire life for a lot of different reasons, and this is by far the most embarrassing thing to ever happen to me. When that all happened, I was accused of something that I did not do, and I was able to prove it all wrong, but I did recognize that I needed to make changes, and I uploaded a video making a lot of promises to my audience and to the public that I was going to work on myself behind the scenes, and I did. I spent 2 years, changing my behavior, changing the way that I went about dating and flirting with guys. I worked on rebuilding my brand and my social media presence, and now, 2 years later, that this is happening again, even though the situations are not connected, even though it's a different thing, it really looks as though I have made no progress, I haven't listened, I haven't learned, and that sucks so much. And I said it in my last video, but I will say it again.
Interesting. So you could see again and again and again, he's referencing down and to the side and down and to the side and down and to the side. Now we could see as he's doing his makeup, he's looking off to this side, which means that there's a mirror there. So something is down here and to the side, and every time that he references it, it's around some sort of burst of nonverbal activity, be it like he just closed his eyes and had to check down there a few times, so on and so forth. There it is again. Now that I've brought up my own I'm buying time while I'm trying to formulate my next sentence during this. I'm so hyper aware of it. But he keeps looking down and to the side. And that does indicate to me that that's likely a spotting monitor, because if you close your eyes for a while, it's nice to be able to look up. Like mine's up here, off to the side up here. It's nice to be able to check up there to make sure you're still in focus, still in frame, everything looks fine. That's a very common tell in just about every YouTuber that has a spotting screen. You can see it come up again and again and again. So that's the reason that it pushed me to believe that he's got a monitor of some sort down there. Like I said, it is not him accessing any sort of memory, be it fake, auditory, visual, blah, blah, blah. Not that. It's likely him looking at his monitor. Let's continue.
To everybody close to me, to all my friends, my family, my fans, I am so sorry for disappointing you guys and letting you down.
Again, he has a extended blink. So sorry. I'm kind of surprised he didn't use the word absolutely sorry. It didn't really fit in there, but you get what I'm saying there. But that is, like I said, a repeated thing that he will do again and again and again. Now, whether or not that blink is indicating, well, maybe he's not so sorry or something like that, we really can't say in this, because there's not enough tells around that to give us context, except for the fact that it has popped up in other areas where he's really trying to amplify. So if that's the case, then that would actually push us more towards authenticity, as he's kept this same pattern of every time that he's trying to amplify what he's saying, he has done this extended blink. That's actually pushing us towards authenticity. Let's continue.
Once again, this isn't just something that I can move on from. I am aware that, no matter what I say in this video or 10 videos down the line or a year's worth of videos down the line, these stories and accusations are going to follow me for the rest of my life and the rest of my career. And that sucks so much. It's not even funny. And it's so horrifying and embarrassing. But at the end of the day, it's my own fault and my own responsibility to take accountability for what I did. I want to be held accountable for what I did do. And all I can hope is that whether it be, weeks, months, years down the line, I'm able to showcase my growth in the person that I really am.
So verbally speaking, he's calling light to his own failures, which is very important in maintaining credibility and authenticity. So when I was saying earlier that I'll talk about some of these verbal things that he's doing and how it plays into blah, 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 all that I said earlier, I'll go ahead and say that now. When a person is lying, say they have no credibility at all, they know that their story that they are presenting is 100% false. It's harder to bring light to the areas that the story might be failing. So say you didn't want to steal a loaf of bread, well, you would maybe make up a story that you didn't go to the bakery at all, blah, 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 whatever. Well, the thing is that maybe somebody will see you go to the bakery, or say that there's some sort of fault. Well, you don't want to bring any light to that if you're lying, because any sort of bad attention to that is bad. You could be caught out. So what is actually more common in people who are being authentic or genuine is that they will be aware of their own faults in a narrative and still bring light to those, because they know that they have an element of truth still on their side. Whereas a person who's being fully deceitful insists that they are completely correct and there are no faults. Now, people who are great at lying or maybe great at manipulating can consciously do this as well, bring light to their own narrative of failures and so on and so forth. Like I just mentioned here, people can watch my videos and be like, oh, so I just need to add maybe some bad details in there and shed light on them so people think I'm genuine and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you can do that. But also considering the context, there are other tells that will let people know that a person is lying outside of that. Just considering all of what he's doing in context, it's actually pushing again towards authenticity and being genuine in here rather than being deceitful. Still good on James's part. Let's continue.
I want to take some time in this video today to just shed some light and further information on some stories, that either did or did not happen and that I saw being spread on social media while I was gone, because I think it's really important that you guys have the full picture of what actually went down. There was basically one drama channel on Twitter that started a thread and started compiling a list of anybody that said literally anything about me on social media. And after what felt like weeks of somebody new coming forward every single day, it eventually became the 20 victims of James Charles. I am just not comfortable with this video, or really any video moving forward, allowing anybody, let alone my followers, to think that there are any victims of James Charles, let alone 20 victims of James Charles, because that is completely, unequivocally not true. There's a guy.
So he's still doing his regular tell of the eye blinking when he's really trying to emphasize a point. And that, like we said, is part of what he does. Along with that, he has some affirmative head nods in there that's synchronized as well. Let's continue.
my high school on that list because he made a video about me, and as annoying as it was, at least in his video, he fully said that it was completely consensual, that we were both grown adults, and that he was only posting it for clout. I can at least appreciate the honesty, but the problem is when it was reported on Twitter, it was a fan comes forward about James Charles forcing him to do blah, 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 which is just so far from what was even said by the person that actually made the video in the first place. But the worst part about all of this is that on top of all of those situations, there were countless videos posted that were completely fake. When more and more things were being added to this list, the one response that I saw over and over and over again was that there's a pattern here. You know, James keeps saying that he's the victim. He keeps saying that these people are lying to him or taking advantage of him. All these people can't be working together, and where there's smoke, there's fire, so obviously something is going on. And I 1,000,000% understand exactly why people are saying that, because if I was on the outside, I'd be saying the same exact thing. It looks so suspicious. I kept thinking, like, why does this keep happening to me?
This is good news for us to hear him say this. That means that he is at least watching the responses to the videos that he's saying. Now, whether or not he's watching it so that he can get better at lying the next time, or if he's watching it because he wants to understand where he's failing and has to improve, we can't really say. Considering the context, it's still kind of muddy because this pattern has shown up for him. He has done this again and again and again, or at least has been alleged to, and I think that there is some weight behind what those allegations were and who they came from. I know that there were probably some false ones in there as well, but he is still bringing light to that as well. So that is good for us to be able to see him bring light to the patterns and show that he is listening to them at very least, acknowledging feelings, everything along those lines. So that is good from him. It's good to be able to know that he's at least paying attention. Let's see if we can see why he's paying attention.
Am I doing wrong? Why can't I just find somebody who likes me for me? But I finally realized, and like I talked about in my last video, I was allowing myself to be so easily accessible to literally anybody who wanted to give me attention and have a conversation for 5 minutes, because I was so delusional in thinking that the conversation can't hurt. Maybe it'll actually lead to me finding, you know, the one. When in reality, of course, statistically, that does make sense. If you talk to more people, it, I guess, increases your chances of being able to find a potential partner.
So I will make note of this. He's still painting himself out while saying that he has done wrong things. The things that he's saying he has done wrong aren't really wrong, if that makes sense. So he's saying, you know, I really messed up on this, and the thing that I did to mess up was I was too open to people. And while this could be partially true, it's very rare that a person is still that good in any instance. So if there's something like this that sparks up, sometimes it can be completely uncalled for. The person is actually genuinely just an amazing person and somebody else was terrible and spread a fake rumor. I'm sure even most of us can think of times where it was an absolutely false rumor that was spread about ourselves and somebody has just malicious intent. There is that possibility, but I don't find that as likely, especially as a person becomes more popular and influential, that it could become less likely that they're completely innocent in a situation. So that is something that I'm noticing, is that his faults that he's admitting are still very benign faults, if that makes sense. So let's see how this plays out.
But at the same time, I wasn't realizing that that also increases my chances of finding somebody not great that doesn't want to talk to me for the right reasons and that might lie or take advantage of me. And that is nobody's fault other than my own. When speaking of this, I think it's really important for me to clarify as well that in no way, shape, or form am I trying to invalidate victims or victim blame or victimize myself either. When I posted my last video, I recognized that although I was not guilty of what I was being accused of, I was not innocent in general and did need to make a lot of changes and apologize moving forward. So I'm not trying to invalidate any of those people, but at the same time, you can't be a victim of something that did not happen.
So he even just now brings light to what I just brought up, that he's not completely innocent in the area. So he's saying a lot of the right words right now. He's saying a lot of what we would need him to say, and that is actually pretty on par for James. He has always said pretty good things in regards to some of these allegations. So that isn't unusual for him, but I'm still kind of keeping my eye on him, if that makes sense. I don't want to just buy into it fully and be like, oh, well, he seems to be being fully honest right now, so everything else is fine, and let's just move forward as if everything is hunky-dory. I'm still a little bit suspicious, so let's see how that actually plays out.
And with all these people making completely fake conversations and screenshots and posting videos of a 5-minute conversation just to get attention and clout and likes and go viral on social media to add to this crazy narrative, all it does is discredit and disrespect the people that were actually affected in the first place, and it waters
This is true. Non-verbally speaking, I will talk about his nonverbal, just everything that's happening right now. And the reason that I haven't been bringing it up prevalently right now is because it hasn't really shown any anomalies that demand that. He's been pretty synchronized throughout that. Even while his pitch and tone increase, his gestures increase. Or as the emotion drops off, his tone drops off and his pitch drops off and he subdues his body language a little bit. And whether or not this is all conscious, it's hard to say. It's very difficult to be able to fully consciously do all of these things all at the same time, manage all your different channels of communication to come across as fully synchronized, but it's possible. For instance, think of an actor or an actress performing a role. So there is that difference there, which still does push me to believe that James might be being authentic in this area. Let's see how that plays out.
Down the severity of the issue and the situation going on, but it also discourages people from being able to come forward in the future, because when it's so easy to Photoshop and edit these conversations from beginning to end, nobody's going to know what to believe, and that is a really, really dangerous situation.
That's true, and that's where I have some frustration for people who are faking these allegations. Any instance where a person fakes any sort of crime or allegation towards another person ruins the credibility of people who genuinely have that struggle. It's so frustrating. Anyway, let's continue.
You have some receipts that I definitely think would help, but I'm also going to be honest and say that there's several situations that I don't have any sort of receipts for, especially not the conversations that were completely fake, and I really don't want to leave anything on the table, no matter what sort of receipts or screen.
Interesting move here by James. He's saying that I have no receipts. I haven't been keeping track of it. I'm not going to bring any to the table. And while this is pushing us once again maybe towards authenticity, it could also be indicating that he doesn't have these because it's true. So that is a risky card for him to play. The fact that he's calling this out as well could be bringing more light to him possibly being authentic.
Screenshots or proof that I include or share online, there's always going to be a group of people that refuse to believe it because the narrative and the drama and the tea is simply more fun and more entertaining. And that really, really sucks. But, I know the person that I am. I know what I've done. I know what I have not done. And I know what I need to work on. And all I can hope is that there will always be people out there who are willing to let other human beings learn and grow from their mistakes. And I just really look forward to hopefully showing that in the future. Whenever anybody apologizes, personally, I always think it's really important to not only apologize, but also to be able to explain that you understand how what you did was wrong and why it affected somebody and how you're not going to do it again in the future. So when I uploaded my last video, I talked a lot about how I was desperate and coming to terms with that. And looking back now, that was not the right word to use. It became quite a meme and a trend online, and I totally understand why. That was not supposed to be an excuse for anything that happened at all. I was simply trying to explain to you guys that I finally understood why I kept getting into this position over and over and over again, and how it was my own fault and nobody else's. In my last video, I mentioned that moving forward, I was going to be asking every single...
So he's still doing this trend that we've seen from him of offering a fault that's really just painting him out to be a nice person while still trying to be like, no, I still have fault. And it feels as if James is trying to still paint himself out as if he is actually fully innocent, but he's trying to say, no, I'm not fully innocent. I'm just too open. I'm just too sharing. I'm just too willing to allow people to come into my life. And that's, see, it's a fault. It's a fault of mine. And I don't know. I have difficulty in and of myself. There's no nonverbal reason for this, for me to be able to say this. I have difficulty in and of myself believing that he's totally faultless or that his faults are these very sweet, benign things. It still gives off this feeling of maybe like in the show The Office, Michael Scott saying, one of my biggest fallbacks is that I care too much. Like is it though? Is that a fallback? Is being too open to people a fallback? Maybe. But it's not what we're expecting. It's not kind of what we're seeing. Let's talk a little bit more about that later.
Person that I spoke to for IDs, make sure that this never ever happened again. And that's already something that I've been doing and has been working great. But it's now clear to me more than ever that I need to be doing so much more to protect myself and my brand and my privacy and safety, most importantly, as well. And these are all things that I've learned from making mistakes. Now, I'm not bringing any of that up to ask for sympathy or act like woe is me. Once again, I recognize that
interesting where he says, no, I'm not bringing any of that up. And he does his palms forward defensive gesture that everybody does. Like I said, everybody seems to do this, at least here in America. It does change culture to culture. Obviously, I want to be clear about that. But everybody does this here in America and similar cultures. So I just see that pop up again and again through almost all of these apology videos that I do, regardless of who it is, regardless of their background or following or anything. It always pops up. Just a funny note.
These type of things can happen when you have a platform. It's up to me to protect myself and make sure that I am not allowing myself to be so easily accessible to let those people in the first place. But that doesn't mean that I still don't want to find my right person, just like everybody else. I just don't exactly know how to go about that yet, but I'm going to figure it out as I go. I don't know who my perfect person is going to be or how I'm going to go about meeting them. I do know that I'm going to be way more careful and way more patient moving forward. All I can do is just learn from that situation and figure out how to better protect myself and be more careful moving forward. And that, I promise, is exactly what I'm going to be doing.
Okay, so that's the end of the part that I kind of comprised to be able to get the key points and all of that. If you do want to watch the full video, like I mentioned at the beginning, go over to his channel and see it there, and that will let you see the whole thing in the context. And if you want to see the rest of the look that he does with makeup, go ahead and check that out as well. It doesn't matter to me. Go ahead and do you. So non-verbally speaking, throughout that, I saw an impressive amount of synchronization across his non-verbal and verbal channels, both of those. And across his verbal channels, this includes the pitch, the tone, the pacing, the patterns, everything that we see verbally, and that still maintains synchronization across his hand gestures, his facial expression, and his body movements. So those channels were also synchronized. This level of synchronization is difficult to achieve if you're being deceitful. It is not impossible to achieve. Like I said, actors who are great at their job can do so nearly flawlessly. But it is more difficult for a common person who is not a trained actor, not a trained on-screen talent, which maybe James could be considered as such because he's been in YouTube for a while. It is less common for an average person to do that. So James is, I have seen plenty of his videos and I know that he's good on camera. He's very fluid on camera. He's comfortable. He has been even from the very beginning. He started years and years and years and years and years ago with a different channel, and he has always been pretty comfortable on camera. But the fact that he also pulled in these other aspects that would make it more difficult for him to lie, he called light to his own failures and to plot holes that could be seen in his own narrative, that also pushes me towards credibility rather than deceit. So wrapping up from the nonverbal side, I believe he was being genuine in this. Just speaking on the nonverbal side, I think he was being genuine. I would say maybe with about 80 to 85% certainty that he was being genuine. Now, for my personal opinion, to kind of go along with that and bounce off of that, for me, the way that I'm going to look at that is, okay, well done, James. This is what we needed to hear from you. You have faults still. You've acknowledged that you have faults. And even though his acknowledging of the faults is kind of watery with the, my biggest failure is that I'm such a good person kind of thing, even though that's what a lot of his faults were, at least he's willing to acknowledge that he has faults, even if he acknowledged the wrong ones. So what I would like to see from James from this point forward is to not have issues with this anymore. Just don't. You don't have to. Not everybody who's famous has issues that James is having here. He is putting himself in these positions again and again and again, and it's showing a pattern. Now, whether or not he's going to move forward correctly and maturely and intelligently, that's going to be up to him. I have no idea what he's going to do. So if you do have a different opinion or you have more information that I've missed out on in this whole entire area, that could really help add some clarity. Maybe you know something that many people don't know, leave it in the comments below. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, hit the bell if you would like to be able to see videos sooner, or if you would like to be able to catch some impromptu live streams that are released and then go away on Patreon for all eternity after that. If you would like to see those, the bell is the way to do that. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for today. My name is Logan and you have been oh so awesome as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.